Welcome back, everyone. Today we're diving into a brand new explainer, and we are doing a complete top-to-bottom financial audit into the hidden mechanics of a highly specific, notoriously misunderstood retail sector. You know, when you walk past a bustling gun store, it is so easy to assume they are just printing money in there. But the reality of operating in such a highly regulated space creates an economic ecosystem that is unlike almost any other business out there. So today, we're literally tearing down the facade to show you exactly how this unique business model actually functions under the hood.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to start with part 1, the million-dollar business. Then we'll move into part 2, unpacking the revenue streams. Part 3 is all about the hidden economics. And finally, part 4, the real bottom line. Let's get right into deconstructing this business.
All right, kicking things off with section 1, the million-dollar business. This is our top-down financial teardown.
$1 million. We're anchoring our entire explainer today on this massive, eye-catching revenue figure. And honestly, a local, moderately successful, independent store can very easily pull in $1 million in gross sales in a single year. Now, when you hear that number, it's incredibly easy to think the owner is just rolling in cash, right? But in retail, and especially in this specific type of retail, gross revenue is really just a vanity metric. It's a far cry from actual take-home profit. Having $1 million come into the cash register is literally just the starting line of a grueling financial marathon. So let's figure out what actually happens to that money.
Moving right along to section 2, unpacking the revenue streams. Let's look at where the money actually comes from.
So that $1 million revenue isn't just one giant monolith. It is actually a very delicate, interconnected mix of 3 core categories: firearms, accessories, and ammo, and services. You might naturally think a store in this sector makes all of its money just selling its core product, but the reality is way more complex. Firearms are the primary draw, right? They're the magnet that gets people through the front door. But right alongside them are the accessories, the optics, the holsters, the ammunition. And finally, you have that third category, services. This includes things like gunsmithing repairs, cleaning, and training classes. To really understand the economics of this business, we absolutely have to understand how these 3 very different categories interact with one another.
And this is where it gets super counterintuitive. In this kind of retail, high-ticket core inventory, the firearms themselves generate massive revenue volume. Obviously, selling a single rifle might instantly ring up $1,000 on the register, but the profit margins on these items are notoriously slim. We're talking low single digits in a lot of cases. The store might literally only make $50 to $100 on that massive flashy sale. It's a highly competitive space, and consumers price shop these big items fiercely. Now, contrast that with add-ons and services. They have a much lower overall revenue volume, sure, but significantly higher profit margins. That $20 cleaning kit, the $50 box of specialized ammo, or a $100 training class, those items can easily carry markups of 40, 50, or even nearly 100% when you're talking about pure services. So a store is essentially using the flashy $1,000 item just to get you in the door, knowing perfectly well their actual survival depends entirely on selling you those high-margin accessories and services before you walk back out.
Okay, let's dive into section 3, the hidden economics. This is all about the unique costs of doing business.
Operating in such a highly regulated space introduces these incredibly specific, unavoidable layers of cost that a standard retail store simply does not face. First up, you have high and static inventory costs. To sell a high-ticket item, you've got to stock it. That means hundreds of thousands of dollars of the owner's capital is just sitting there, completely dead on a shelf, locked up in steel and polymer, waiting for a buyer. Next, you've got specialized insurance premiums. You definitely cannot just buy a standard run-of-the-mill strip mall insurance policy here. The liability and theft insurance required for this highly specific inventory is astronomically expensive. Then we have the strict compliance and regulatory challenges. This isn't just about filling out a simple yearly tax form. We're talking federal licensing, meticulous record keeping, strict secure storage mandates, and regular audits. This level of compliance requires immense administrative hours and specialized software, all of which drives up payroll and operational costs. And all of this culminates in one huge headache: continuous cash flow problems. When your capital is trapped in expensive inventory and your overhead is totally bloated by specialized insurance and compliance, managing the day-to-day cash just to keep the lights on becomes an absolute high-wire act.
Because of those intense cash flow problems and extreme operational expenses, the entire business model has to shift. It absolutely cannot survive on one-off transactions. And that brings us to a massively vital concept: customer lifetime value, or CLV. Basically, this is the total net profit a company expects from a single customer over their entire relationship. Maximizing CLV becomes the absolute lifeblood of the store's profitability. The store owner doesn't just want you to buy a product today, they need you to buy the product, return next month for a training class, come back in the winter for a specialized site installation, and buy your supplies from them every single season for the next 10 years. Building community, offering expert advice, and fostering deep customer loyalty isn't just good customer service. In this industry, it is a strict mathematical requirement for the business to not go bankrupt.
And finally, Section 4, the real bottom line. It is time to strip away all the layers.
Let's look at how all this cascades down. We start at the top with our $1 million anchor. Looks great, right? But immediately we hit the cost of goods sold, or COGS. Because those core items are so incredibly expensive and carry such slim margins, the cost to simply purchase that inventory from manufacturers wipes out a massive percentage of that $1 million right out of the gate. We're often talking 70 to 80% of it, just gone. Then you take what's left, the gross profit, and you have to run it through the gauntlet of operating and compliance costs. You deduct the massive specialized insurance premiums. You deduct the physical security infrastructure. You deduct the high administrative payroll required to stay legally compliant. And then, of course, you still have to pay the rent, the utilities, and the marketing. When you finally reach the bottom line, the net profit, the actual money the business gets to keep, it is a mere fraction of where we started. A store grossing $1 million might only see a net profit of $50,000, maybe $75,000 on a really good year. It's essentially a single-digit margin business masquerading as a gold mine. It requires incredible business acumen, flawless inventory management, and a masterful understanding of customer retention just to stay in the black.
Which brings us to the end of our deep dive today. Considering the incredibly strict compliance requirements, the massive capital required for inventory, and the razor-thin final margins we just unpacked, you really have to ask yourself, is the risk-to-reward ratio of this highly regulated retail sector actually worth it? It clearly takes a very specific, dedicated type of entrepreneur to navigate this labyrinth. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this structured teardown gave you a whole new perspective on the hidden economics of retail. Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.